Hey, yo, it's Guido coming at you with Tactics Talk. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. And we have another review, a review of a new Russian premium tank. The rarest of all unicorns, right? This almost never happens. Well, it's happening a lot, isn't it? Here it is, the T-103 Tier 8 Russian TD premium tank. And no, I am not zoomed in on this. You can see it here in the garage. Let me zoom out. That is the full zoom out. Let me give you an example of the size of this thing right off the bat. I'm going to call up another very large TD at Tier 8. This is the JT. He's a little guy. He's a little guy. Look at the size of this thing. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We'll do this the same. As always, we'll have an overview. We'll look at the tech tree considerations, the 3D model, of a comparison amongst its peers. Look at my stats. I've played 20 battles in it. Take a look at my setup, and then I'll give you 3 examples of gameplay of the T-103 Russian Tier 8 Premium TD. So, overview. Doesn't much look like a TD, does it? Looks like kind of a Mongoloid heavy tank. It does have a turret, and that's important. It happens to be a 360 full turret. You know what? I think so. I haven't actually tried to turn it backwards, but I haven't had any stops on it. So I'm assuming it's 360. You would think I'd know that as I'm reviewing it, but it occurs to me that I never looked straight backwards on it. You know, this thing looks like, if you take a look at the hull, it looks like the hull of a Su-100 or maybe a KV-5 or KV-4, and I think they all share very similar design. Then it's got this giant tumor of a head like a dog that's been bitten by bees a couple times on the lips, and his head swole up. You know, it occurred to me it sort of looks like the progeny of a tryst between a Su-100Y and a KV-2. And then the kid grew up and got into steroids. But he never did leg day. We're going off the tracks here. That's what this looks like to me, though. A very large gun on this thing. Very large TD. Take a look at the AT-15, little guy. Charioteer, tiny guy compared to this thing. Look at that. It looks like it's the wrong scale for the game. It really does. That's how big it is. Chinese, the prototype, which is fairly large, is dwarfed by this thing. And like I said, the JT. Here's the other new TD that came out. Fairly low slung TS5. At the top of its game, this thing is, I won't call it OP, but it certainly is at the top of OP or close to it. And we've got the T-103, which is massive. It's just gigantic. Decent sloping here. It's about 100 millimeters. We'll talk about that when we look at the model. Turret is quite tall. This is an interesting thing about this tank. The bushes in the game are not really designed for this tank. The top of it, especially this spotting point up here, or this hatch, just really poke out of nearly any bush, and it has near zero camo. So it's interesting as far as that goes. We'll talk about that during gameplay just a little bit. Pretty flat along here. It is curved right underneath the hull. The hull is decently curved from the front, although it's got a pretty flat area here. And then from the side, just look at this big billboard of a side to be shot at, around 100 millimeters on the side of this thing as well. And it is a fantasy napkin tank. Well, not a fantasy necessarily if we look at the vehicle details. It's a blueprint tank, let's put it that way. You kind of have the production tanks, and you have the prototype tanks, and you have the blueprint tanks, and then you have the fantasy tanks. This one at least had a blueprint and a plan. And interestingly, it says could be used for coastal defense. So built to neutralize fortified emplacements and could be used for coastal defense. It's really a self-propelled gun, not artillery, but for taking down fortifications, and like it said, mobile coastal defense. Not really a TD, but this is World Tanks. That's where those types of class of vehicles live, in the TD line. And so here it is. All right, let's move on to tech tree consideration. All right, for tech tree consideration, seeing as it is a premium tank, the only things you're really concerned about will be the crew, and is it a good crew trainer, is it a good match? You can see that the Su-100 right here starts with a commander gunner driver loader, whereas with the 103 we are running a commander gunner driver loader. So there's an extra loader. The Su-100 splits off to the 2 lines for the Soviets, the Su-152 line moving up, and then the Su-100M1 line. The commander gunner driver loader will go through the 100M1 to the 101, but once you get to the tier 9 and 10 on both lines, it's this setup over here with the commander gunner driver loader. You can see that on the Object 263 as well, and the 152, and that's the same for the 268 and 2684. So it is a good trainer for the Tier 9 and 10, a good trainer for the ISU and the rest of them. If you're training a crew for the 101, the 100M1, or the 100, then you are training an extra loader, but not a big deal. He'll just fall a little bit behind. It'll still train your crew. So it is a fairly homogeneous kind of trainer as far as being able to cover a good majority of the top end of the Soviet line. All right, let's move on to the tech. No, we did tech tree. We're done with that. We're going to do 3D model. Here's a 3D model. You can see that it just really doesn't have a whole lot of hull armor. It says 100, but it kind of depends on where you're looking here. We got 60 on these little turrets right here. Not much going on when it's flat plated. You can get to kind of an auto bounce angle with an angle down on the lower plate, but even the upper one's not really. Then you're exposing a lot of the side of the tank anyway. It's all 100 or 140 in the case of this, based on the angle. So yeah, there's a couple auto bounce things you can show, but look at all the weird little angles that are all relatively flat and easy to pin. So you really want to just keep the turret exposed if you can help it. We'll talk about it, but it's actually got pretty good depression, which is interesting. But if you look at the turret's really quite well armored. 260, 220 right there. As it then starts to curve back, it gets more and more effective armor until you get to auto bounce angles up here. There's a weak spot on the top right here, and then of course the mantlet is actually pretty strong. Not amazing down along here where you get that kind of double mantlet thing going on. It's pretty good, but up here not that good. 250 still requires some pretty good oomph to get through, but it can be pinned by some of the higher tier tanks right there. And as you angle it, you can see that you lose some of that capability. And you go flat plate, holy cow. Nearly anything is going to go through most of this. 140, yeah, that requires a little bit. Some tier 6s may struggle to go through that without gold, especially the smaller ones, but still any of the tier 8s, 9s, or 10s are going to butter this thing anywhere from the side. And of course the top is very thinly armored here. Good luck trying to shoot the top of this. You'd have to be very well above it. But if you did get that far above it, it's a very nice big flat spot to blap a shot through at 36 millimeters at that angle right there. That is pretty much it. Not much to say. It's just a relatively strong turret. Not amazing, but good enough in some cases to be that kind of ridge brawler or hold down guy. But good luck covering this giant hull with some of those rubble piles and things in city that are just not going to be tall enough. And never mind trying to keep the hull behind, or the turret behind things, because of how tall that thing is. What I found is I would expose this part pretty easily, even when I was attempting to ridge fight, just based on the way the game is designed and the terrain is designed. So that was a bit of a problem. We'll talk about some of that as we get into gameplay. All right, now for a comparison amongst some of its peers, and I've kind of got a I can't even say it. Mix match here. We've got some premium TDs and a couple standard tech tree that have turrets, and a couple premiums that have turrets. So we got the 103, the usual suspects here with the Scorpiansky, the Scorpion, the T-28, and the Charioteer are tech trees that have turrets, just to kind of take a look at that. TS5, which is the last new premium that came out. Kanonen Jagdpanzer 105, that came out fairly recently in the ISU 130. So kind of an interesting tale of the tape right here for these numbers. You'll see that the 103 has got 440 average damage, which is higher than most in there. You've got the 130 PM at 520. You've got one at 490 with the Scorpion, and then it's doing pretty well. You got 490 with the ISU down there. The penetration is pretty decent, not the top of the class, but 258 with the Charioteer at 268 and the Kanonen at 268 as well. But that is a comfortable penetration to have at tier 8. Rate of fire is decent. You'll see the reload time is 10.74, which is faster than some, slower than others. You know, you've got the TS5, which is kicking down shells down range really fast, but this thing is sitting more at 10.75, so it's not TS5 levels of rate of fire. Gun traverse speed, or turret traverse speed, is 15.69, which is decent, and you'll see that the turret traverse angles doesn't show one, so it does not have a stop. If you look at the T-28 prototype here, 143 degrees, so this thing can actually spin its turret all the way around. We'll forego speculation on the engineering challenges of such a large, heavy turret. Also being able to turn all the way around. We'll just leave that one lie, all right? We'll leave that one lie. The gun depression is -8 with a 30 lookup, which actually surprised me. That would, though, check with being a naval gun. So that's kind of interesting. That's quite a lot of lookup. And there are some situations where that can be very useful on back slopes, looking up across the slope, things like that. But -8 is right there at that comfortable range. Not 10, that'd be nice, but -8 is very usable in the game. Aiming time is 2.21, which is okay. Not Canon or TS5. We'll talk about the TS5 a little bit as we go. It's ridiculous. The dispersion is 0.35, which is okay. I will tell you, though, that even with a 2.21 aiming and a 0.35 dispersion, the gun is relatively comfortable. So soft stats wise, something else is going on in there. It is not a laser accurate gun like the Canon is, but it's actually a fairly comfortable gun, and I didn't feel like it was derpy. You know, I've run into guns that had better stats, and sometimes I'll say, you know, it feels a little bit derpy. This one just didn't. And it may be the way I was playing it because I was up close and personal quite a bit, but it just seemed relatively comfortable, right? Not laser accurate, but comfortable. Average damage per minute is solid. It's right in the middle. If you look at it, it's right up there with most of them, 24, 23, 24. Of course, you got the outliers at the end, the TS at 29.45, the ISU at 29.77. You might look at those two numbers and say, wow, those are close. Well, the TS's is usable, the ISU's is not. You've got the Canon Jagdpanzer at 2,000, which is very low for this class. Survivability is actually decent. You can run this as a bit of a heavy. We'll again talk about this as we go. So at 1250, it's decent. It's not TS5 brawny like 1500, but you've got a couple more hit points to play with there. So if you're in a game where you can act more like a heavy, then you have a little bit more staying power than some of these other tanks will in the Assault TD. Now the armor looks pretty good here. Whole armor is okay, better than most, not as good as say a TS5 or a prototype, but the turret armor is pretty nice at 220 for sure. Like I said though, this one doesn't do leg day, so that lower part is vulnerable on this tank, and the turret armor, while usable, is going to find itself not being as usable as it would be for other tanks with smaller turrets, where you can minimize your exposure through size or movement, things like that. This is a giant tumor, and it's fairly easily hit. Mobility is pretty low. It's got the best engine power of the class, but it's a great big heavy beast, and it does a whole 40 kilometers an hour forward and 12 backwards. So it backs up slowly and moves forward slowly. It has an okay traverse. It can get where you want. It's not T95 or TOG slow, but it is certainly not zipping around the battlefield at any kind of high speed. Traverse speed is decent at 31 for the whole, not too bad. Add that into the turret, and you've got an okay capability to take on people who are trying to circle you. The turret is relatively slow though. Overall, what was it, 15 or something? So just turning the turret, you're gonna have a hard time fighting two guys on different angles, trying to keep them honest by turning your turret towards them, because that thing is just gonna be moving really slowly. Here's where it gets real interesting with this tank. Look at that concealment, virtually none. 4.45 is just a massive beast sitting around on the battlefield. I will tell you, and we'll talk about it probably a little bit while I'm playing, there were a couple times where I drove into bushes where I knew I wasn't having an issue with the tall turret, but I got spotted instantly. It just doesn't have any concealment. The crew I was running didn't have much concealment either. They were the Su-100Y crew, which I didn't bother with. It's the same idea as the Su-100Y. It just is seen everywhere it goes, bush or no. People are going to be seeing this thing. So if you want to be unseen, you're going to stay outside of the spotting range and right inside of draw range if you're going to be that standoff sniper kind of guy. And the view range is actually very good at 380, although there are a couple other tanks in class that are right there with it. The prototype and the ISU-130 being two of the notable ones in there. So the spotting range is nice. And look at that sweet signal range at 730. So what's there to say about this from the comparison? Well, it's kind of interesting actually. The numbers look really good overall, or at least solid, but this is a tank where the sum of the whole is slightly less than what the numbers look like. And I think a lot of it has to do with that camo, where it just gets seen everywhere it goes. And if you play it as a heavy, it's kind of a uninspired heavy, other than how hard it hits and a decent turret. So you're talking about a glass cannon with some armor, which is a weird thing to say, but that's kind of what it is. And you're really going to want with this tank to decide whether you are going to be the brawling heavy guy or you're going to stand off. And that has a lot to do with your tier placement and what the other tanks are, and to some extent what the map is that you're playing. So we'll talk about that when we get to the gameplay. All right, so how did I do in this tank? I didn't do too bad. I'm running a 50% at 20 battles. So I played 20 battles, 50% win rate, 947 average XP, which I'm fairly happy with. Anytime I get near 1,000, I'm doing pretty good. Like I said, 50%. I've survived 40% of the battles, 71% hit rate. That was considerably lower at about 15 battles, and I guess I had 5 battles where I really brought that up. I realize at 20 battles, these numbers can change radically, even over the course of 4 or 5 battles. But it seems to be fairly well in line with my other TDs at Tier 8. Damage ratio 2.09, destruction 2.5, and armor use is starting to get to that point where it's noticeable. Anything near 1 is pretty good armor, and you can start to rely on it in certain situations. Anything near 0 is 0 armor. You get into that 0.5 area and slightly higher, that is a situational armor tank where it is happening for you, and in a couple of cases you're probably making it happen because you're using the armor right, but it's not something that's really reliable, and you would say, wow, this is a heavily armored tank. But still, it is bouncing some shots. 2,162 average damage. Damage received is quite a bit, nearly my full hit points, so I am taking a lot of damage. And my assist is only at 334, so probably need a few more tracking shots. Still, though, with a gun like that, you're not really concentrating on tracking shots as much as you are just punching through with that 440 alpha. Spotted as low as you would expect, but kind of high actually for a TD in there, so that talks a lot to me moving forward with this and playing as a heavy most of the time. 1.5 in the destroyed, and I had a maximum damage of 4,272 with 7 kills in there with a max experience of 1896, and that checks pretty closely. Let's see, if you look at the 130 PM at 44 battles in that's a relatively new one, running 52% with only 800, and that one only averaged 1623 and a low hit rate as well with only 207, so it didn't do quite as well in the 130 PM at 44 battles. And in the Camouflage at 36 battles, that's a 69%. I'll show you this one because it's got the lower DPM and ends up with 1796 average, 343, which is comparable in there, but a much higher hit rate, as you might expect with the better gun right there, although the damage and destruction ratio are very close on that. Realize that there's less hit points on that thing as well. And if we go up to the American TS5, 50% at 20 battles, pretty comparable actually with the numbers right there. Roughly the same damage per game, 350 assist, a little bit better in accuracy, it's a more accurate, but look at the armor use. Let's find this thing, where the heck is it? 1.05, so clearly a much more armored tank. Prototype, for example, there's a turreted one sitting at 2,320. Again, comparable numbers, but much more accurate at 79% hit rate and up to 1,000 average XP, and a lot more battles on that one. 64% win right there. So doing pretty decently in that thing. Let's take a look at my setup. I basically set this up as a heavy. Some people are running optics in it. That's certainly an option. You could easily drop the enhanced gun laying drive and put optics on it, but I ran vents, rammer, and a gun laying drive right there. I didn't bother with a camo net or anything like that. The gun is, like I said, 258. The gold round is running 307 for the penetration. It's got a 580 HE round, so it can hurt, but it's only 65 pen on that. 440 alpha for the rest of them right there. There are no other modules as it is a premium tank. I'm running 41 regular AP, 6 of the gold. Realize it's only gold AP, not APCR or heat, so you don't have the benefits or negatives of either one of those, as it just runs the standard AP with a better penetration. The HE, I only have 3 rounds of that. I'm running large kits and a automatic fire extinguisher. You could definitely trade the automatic fire extinguisher. I didn't notice it being prone to lighting on fire, although I was running an automatic fire extinguisher, and that is going to minimize, but you could certainly run food in there. And I didn't run any directives on this particular tank. The any of the directives that improve the gun handling or the crew overall is going to be a good choice for it, without getting into too many details there. You can see the crew is decent. It's a 3-skill crew. It's actually a crew that's come out of my 100Y, and interestingly, I've never really trained them to anything else. So eventually, I'll probably need to put them in a different tank. But they've got Brothers in Arms, obviously Sixth Sense, and some other things. You'll note that even though it's a TD crew, there's only 2 of them that have Camouflage right now. And I sort of ran that with the 100Y as in the Y bother, because it is just so giant. So that did affect a little bit how much I was spotted. I just did not have a good camo crew in there. Plus, it's gigantic and has bad camo anyway in there. So let's take a look and see what I actually came out with. Look at that. I showed you about a 5 camo %, because when I show you the comparison, we're only talking about 100% crew without any perks. So you look at the perk crew with the vents, and I get up to a whopping 9.98. So holy cow. It is just, the camo is bad. Have I told you the camo is bad? Anyway, that is my setup. Let's look at some gameplay. Alright, for the first game, this is actually the second game I had in the tank. Ended up acing it. I actually aced this thing 4 times in the 20 battles. It seemed like it was kind of an all or nothing tank. In the right situation, it was pretty awesome and dominant. In the wrong situation, it really struggled quite a bit. All of these are going to be same tier or top tier. In fact, the other 2 I think are same tier, tier 8s. This happens to be top tier, and this is a great setup, obviously, for any tier 8 tank. Now look at the size. This thing, it's actually sticking up over those bushes right there, right? That bush would cover nearly any tank. But this is basically as tall as a Mouse or an E100, maybe slightly taller. So he's really struggling to get in there. Look at the line of sight from one of these bushes up here. If some scout comes through this little flat area, it's going to automatically see this dude. So it's pretty funny. So I'm going to do the classic TV thing. We're just going to kind of sit there. There's that bit of derpiness, and I knocked down a tree. And I have a KV-85 who's decided to drive and park right next to me. So we'll move up just a little bit more. I've got this next line of bushes, and even now I'm concerned. I'm even poking out of those things, I think. So I got to kind of stay. Look at this dude, he's just driving up wherever I go. Decent depression. Now here comes a Tiger, and here's the gun. Pretty little big dispersion, but really not a problem. It zoomed in, and when it zoomed in, it hit where I was going. Let's see if I can hit him again. We'll just blind shot and actually takes him down, no problem. Got a pretty good stack up on the hill over there on the east side. We have a decent amount of tanks over here, but they're all smaller, and I'm really the fire support. The KV-85 and myself. There we go. Now we got an 01 hanging out. I'm just going to center mass this guy and just boom. And that actually hit his turret. Had I aimed for the turret, probably would have went over him. We're just going to drop one where he was. They don't move very fast, and down he goes. E-25 is a little bit hold down right there. He's on the back end of that little swale. Their IS is in the middle. And you can see I've got good depression, but not quite enough right there. With my hull leaning over to the right a bit, I don't have enough depression to put the gun on them, so I've got to kind of shift up above a little bit here on top of the road, so then I don't have to use as much depression. And down goes the 178. The even 90 foolishly sits there after shooting. I must not have Sixth Sense, or not really sure why he was not that bright, but off he goes with a few hit points left. And I'm pretty much hitting everything that I want to right now. A little bit of RNG helping me, but you can see that this is where I kind of started to get the idea that this gun is pretty decent. Now I'm going to take some harder shots right here. This is going to be right into the ground. That's going to be a little bit harder to hit. I'm trying to look for that IS and what he is doing. Let's see if we can drop one on him. Nope. Someone else got him. I thought for a moment that was me, but it looks like the SPIC got him. SP1C. So shift over here and take a look at this IS. Pretty well got this side handled. There's a big stack up in the middle. So now I'm going to use the mobility and the turret. And that's the nice thing about a turreted TD. How it can flex to this roll, to more of a heavy roll. Sat there in the bushes, got some sniping shots, that well dried up, and now I can move across here and start looking potentially like a heavy. Trying to avoid that guy. Now they've got some guys up on the hill, and this is where my bad camo and my giant size is going to work against me a little bit here. Like to get shots on these dudes. I don't want to be seen. And I can come up here, and unfortunately that building's right in the way, but there we go, the 01. Boom, no problem. KB2 and my T-3045 buddy are kind of getting wrecked, and there's a lot of them up there, so I'm hoping that I can keep them from dying. Got one of them. That was the easy one to hit. Now the charioteer is fairly large from the side, so we'll see if we can get some shots on him. There we go. That's where that gun laying drive's helping me once I kind of stop the tank. Helps me zoom a little bit. Down he goes, and then I got seen. Helped to knock down that push a little bit. There's still a KB2, an IS, 1357. I was really worried about the 1357 showing up. There's the IS and the KB2, so just drop one on the KB2. Get rid of the derp gun, that's good. And now I'm starting to take hits from the charioteer, and I sort of scoffed the charioteer, but he reloads pretty quickly. Just wanted to get the kill on the IS. Probably going to buy me another hit. There we go, there's another 384. And boom, boom, even with 1250, just like that, I'm down to almost a one-shot. So we'll back out of that. ARL is looking to handle the 34-1. And now I've got to be careful coming across here. LT-432 moves in, the SP-1C. Looking to light up the charioteer. And there's the Skoda back in the corner there. So we left one back in there. I was wondering where that guy was. I'm going to shift this way and maybe help out the T-43 if I can. I really don't want him to win that fight down there and then show up behind me. So in order to maintain the map control we've built, and then the T-43 takes him out. That's very helpful. Now I can move back. 432 has gone in to help against the T-34-1. And I'm sitting at 29-22 with 6 kills. And we are looking for the last two. The 34-1, with the help of the charioteer, takes down the LT-432. So that tightens things up just a little bit. There is artillery. And really just a good hit from that M44, and he might be able to take me out. Gets into the back deck, might be able to take me out. And finally the T-43 is moving up, and there's the artillery. He's making a runner. This is the only place the gun kind of lets me down, and shoot behind him anyway. And off he goes. So now we've got to figure out how to peel some guys out of the river bottom and off of the hill. And I'm so large, I just feel like I can't cross the tracks without being seen. So I'm going to hang out here for a bit. Maybe the 43 can light some guys. The 44 obviously feels like he can't push into the 34-1. Probably not. The charioteer will more than likely hit him. And if he gets double tapped by the 34-1 and the charioteer, it's all over. So the 43 takes a little peek. And this is a tricky. We don't have any artillery, and the artillery of theirs gets seen. Down he goes. And the T-43 lives, so I was a little bit concerned that he was going to get exposed right there and killed by the charioteer. The charioteer either missed or didn't get a shot, or he's really not looking. And at that point I figured, you know what, he's not looking that way. He's actually on the north end of the hill, looking towards the ARL. You see the ARL crosses, doesn't get killed, and he's taken on the 34-1 again. And the T-43 is moving up the hill. So this is looking good. I look over that and see that the 44 can still take a hit from the 34-1, so it shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead, push forward a little bit as the 43 comes up the hill. Take a little bit of a chance, and I get into the bush right there. And look at that. That's a fairly large bush, and it's struggling to cover the size of this thing. Now, one thing I did not check is whether I had a shot on that guy, and it doesn't look like. It looks like the buildings are in the way. 43 is going to come up and find the charioteer. I'm very helpful clicking on where he is. He's right there. Yes, Bozo, we all know that. So now he pushes in, and there's Mr. Charioteer. Put one hit on him, and the 43 gets him. And it's all over the shouting now. Just speed this up. I do not get the kill on that. I don't think so. Maybe I do. Let's find out. Does Guido get the kill? Yes. There we go. That was the 7-kill battle, and we're at 3,399, 491 assists, and 7 kills, and an ace tanker. Obviously, in that situation, top tier, you're going to have a good day. Provided something really silly doesn't happen, you're probably going to have a good day. There was, what, only 2 tier 8s in the entire battle on each side, so it worked out pretty well. But shows the TD then swinging more to the heavy roll in there. Unwisely traded a lot of hit points from a charioteer who hits pretty hard, so that almost ended my chances of winning the game right there. Let's move on to the second one. The second example, you can see it's all tier 8, and it's going to be more of a heavy medium tank kind of gameplay. I looked at the setup here and said, well, if I can get my gun up here onto the ridge, there's only 1 artillery, so hopefully I don't get focused too much, and I'll try to support these guys taking the hill, maybe punish some of theirs. I'm just fast enough to get here. Their slower mediums can get shot in the side, so if they headed up the hill, I was going to get a shot, but it looks like they did not. Our T-34-3 tries to get it. We got the Pantera. I'm going to come in here and look for shots. Initially thought about going after the GF, but why? So look at that. Look at the turret. Actually just bounced the Lurva's shot. Did not go after the GF because I wasn't going to pin him, but I did have a shot at the Lurva. And now we're just going to try to put one right into the flat side of the turret. A little bit of stun. And we're still moving. So that turret can be used. Not amazing, but it can be used. Push these guys back. There's another bounce. Type 59 bounced. And then this guy right here is really driving me crazy. Drop one on the 8.8. I'm just trying to get around this IS-6. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. And then he's like, no, I'm going to hit you. And I'm going to make a runner up the hill. Enough of them were busy shooting, side-scraping Marbreaker. And now I'm able to come up and take the hill. And boop. And you'll notice right there, as he was coming up, how slow my turret was. I actually had to kick my hold the side just a little bit with a little hip shake there to get it online. Then RNG took over, helped me out, and we took that guy down. A little miss on the 416. And there's the artillery now focusing in. So I was really living dangerously right there with the artillery. And so let's go ahead and move out. And you'll notice that he dropped a pretty good thump on me at 340. We'll back up out of here. No reason to poke around that corner anymore. Look at all the TDs up on their hill, plus their guys stacked up right there. Now I'm just trying to figure out how it is I want to go over to the south side of our hill and see if I can get some hits on these TDs. Very strange. 2 other TDs, in this case 2 casemate TDs, are actually making an assault. So let's go ahead and see if we can punish them for that. I take the dangerous route, but the good news is they're busy hanging out at the back edge there and not pushing in on our IS-6, otherwise they'd have shot me in the side. And I see these dudes coming. Here's that turret use. It's nice to have a TD with a turret, and unfortunately I'm still shooting my gold rounds at the side of those soft-sided TDs. Should have unclicked number 2 a while ago. And we got a pretty good advantage right now. I've dropped to 2197. Now I'm just trying to figure out where I can get some more damage. Maybe we can come down here and take this Lurva out. Kind of unsuspecting. I take a hit, I get tracked, I get hit again, and that's nearly the end of me right there. So rushing out there to kill that low really cost me. And then I'm like, this is the end. Snap one on that guy. He misses, or he shot at the 43, don't know which. And I actually survive I survived that little exchange. Probably should not have. Very little reason for me to push down and try to take the low on, although the game was starting to be won, so sometimes you get in that press mode. Let's just go get some more hit points. We're at 3,091. Back over here to the top, and a good illustration of the flexibility of a turret, which you don't think about until you are running a casemate and you're having a hard time working your way into shots in situations like this. Just a lot more options in here. We got the 8.8. Get spotted, proxy lit by the Chrysler. The regular AP round struggles to go through the casemate. I may have even got into the mantlet on that bad boy. TS5 is just getting rocked. Find a shot on him. He gets away. Look for the track. Accuracy lets me down a little bit right there. And now we're just tracking down the TS5 and the artillery. Artillery's back in that corner. Not the corner the 5100 is going to, but the little slot between 2 and 3 where you can tuck behind the rock, that rock right there. T-32 comes up. Just hammering the poor TS5, and down he goes, and I don't get any hit points off of that guy. Off the artillery, he's hiding in the corner. 3,000 damage, 1,358 assist, but more of a heavy and medium roll right there, right? Pushing in, using the turret, being a more active brawler. Like I said earlier, in the right situations, it can work. You can definitely get yourself in trouble, and you don't have the hit points really, or the whole armor to brawl. So you saw me trade some hit points for no good reason a couple times there and nearly take myself out of the game. So it can be done, but done with care. Let's look at the third one. All right, I've spared you most of the preliminaries here on this one. We are on Cliff, and it is another all-tier-8 battle, but a couple artillery in this one. And you can see by the deployment that I was not feeling it on this one very much. It's looking like a big problem. I don't know, man. I played this yesterday when it came out. It was a Friday. And I saw this a lot without getting too much into the whining about teams. It was one of the strangest days of strange days in World of Tanks where entire teams, and I mean entire teams, would go into corners or one side, one flank. That happens, but it was bizarro world on Friday because it was nearly every game. So I decide in this case, the reason I'm whining about that right now is you know what, I'm just going to go up to this bush and camp it and see what this thing can do as a bush camper unseen. Any tank with a decent gun should be able to do okay as a bush camper unseen if it gets targets. But I'm not really expecting much out of this game. See how far off I missed that one? Because I'm figuring I'm going to sit in this bush. My team's going to lose wholesale because they're going to swarm the middle and the east side of the map, and I'm going to get 3 or 4 shots if I'm lucky, and I'll get out of this with 1,200, 2,000 if something amazing happens. So that's really all I'm expecting here. I didn't feel like I could solo up to the middle. Had I done that, I'd have got artied and jumped by however many tanks they pushed up there. Looks like at least 4, maybe more. The Bulldog has the top, and I'm so slow, there's no reason for me to do anything right now other than hang tight. Now notice this bush is fairly well used, but you know, there are some openings, and this is a great big massive tank right here. And I can't go hold down, so I'm really just relying on not being seen at this point. So we've got a T-69 work in the middle. Now, to my team's credit, at least they have taken the E2-3 area. And now they're filtering back up. Unfortunately, the 44-100 is getting hammered. And there you go. A 42-02 was able to drive all the way around that corner without me seeing it. I'm really just hoping he comes outside. Oh, there we go. So, scout's up there. He eats a shot. Not quite enough to kill. Down goes the 44-100. And now the 45-02 gets hit by Artie. But we're down 4 tanks to their 1. And we're stuffed in a corner. So they have near complete map control minus the object who's really anchoring us completely being stuffed into a corner. Delete the 252 and we're in big trouble. So here comes the KV-4. I'm a little bit rushed on that shot because I thought he was going to get behind that building, which he then does. He's just kind of droning in on us now, so I'm just hoping for him to come around. There we go, 4502 is coming in, and we drop one on him. I'm just going to go ahead and move. And I'm surprised I wasn't seen. He just has bad... No, I was seen. There you go. And we get the scout being a little bit unwise, and I can't quite kill him. The shot comes in on me. Down goes the 4502. That was helpful. Go to the KV-4's lower hole, get one through. I'm still being shot at, spotted again, and now I'm in that problem area of the game that I was talking about earlier, where once I get spotted, I'm gonna have a really hard time fighting this spot. The good news is everything's missing. That's the third shot or so that's missed me, so RNG is really on my side here. KV-4. It's like he's just going to come in at me, so I'll just accept this shot. 428, a little bit of a low roll. He's now a two-shot to me. I'm spamming the gold. And at this point, I'm ahead of the game. I figure, well, I've done about as good as I expected, but the team is actually doing all right. So we're going to try to hang in there. I get a near miss, and we take down the KV-4 because he's worried about the T-26E4 and the T-28. So we're able to take him out. That's the guy that's going to be spotting me. Very surprised 2 artillery haven't just started bombing me here. But they've been busy on the 1-2 line the entire game. And a lot of times artillery players will get focused in one lane or one area, and they just simply do not look at the rest of the map. So they'd have done well to just start bombing me. And now I'm thinking, all right, this is actually now a winnable game. Despite our terrible positioning, the enemy team has porked it away. We're now coming back to the middle. And they did the same thing we did. So the greatest tonic for a really bad deployment by your team is a mirror bad deployment by the enemy team. T-69 is a problem. He needs to go away. In fact, he's going to actually maul me a little while later. T-28's battling, and there's an Oods. And I'm glad I didn't move out. I was about to move out. I'm glad I waited. Put a thump on him. He's just sitting up there. I'm hoping to get one more. Come on, baby. Oh, he just goes over, and then the 69 shows his face. And I know that it's about time to start moving. As I'm counting noses, that's about all their tanks. There's a prototype over there. Look at the look up on this thing. This is what I'm talking about here. I'm on a back slope, and look how well this thing looks up. Holy cow. Maybe that's a front slope. I guess I would say that's on a front slope look up. That's a critical. I don't have any gold. It's going to be a little bit tricky. Tried to get into his side. You can see that most of those are showing orange. I'm just trying to keep him tracked at the moment. Help the artillery whittle this guy down so he doesn't move around too much. Armor not penetrated now, just drop some HE. So I can get into his side a little bit with HE. This thing does have a decent HE gun. There we go. So got to the track to the side, did 230. That'll shave some off. With the added bonus of keeping him tracked. I'm sort of looking around with the pipper there and see if there's a better shot somewhere. Another 200. That actually hit his turret. I think he's looking at me now. He's like, oh, this guy's ticking me off. Another 211. So we've brought him down to a killable state. There we go. And shift over here. Now the Oods made a runner, and the Super went after him, and now we're in great shape at 8-7. Got the IS-6 there. I don't know where the T-69 is. That's the one I'm worried about. At this point, I figure if I get out in the open and the T-69 finds me and shreds me with heat, and then the 2 artillery hit me, then it's game over. So I see the Super Pershing going around. What I'd really like to do is find where this T-69 is. And the IS-6 is trolling around the middle too, so I want to just see if the enemy team will continue to blunder into guns. They've shown a bit of a propensity for that so far. And that's the kind of thing about this position, or positions like this on maps. You're really just relying on the enemy to make dopey moves. And at some point you need to change what you're doing and get in there. And now I've decided to do that. We've got Brock Warhammer and his T-69 is headed up the hill. Down goes the 100.1, but we take 2 of them out for the exchange, and then we lose our super Pershing. So the T-69 found him. Now I've got to run up to this middle area so I can start looking around. And I'd like to get there before the T-69 can get over the edge of this hill right here and see me. So I'm going to cut right a little bit. The further up under here I am, the less chance of him just popping over and seeing me there is. And I figure he's going to be up top there, and interestingly, I'll show you what he does. You're going to know here in just a minute. I'm going to come up to the middle. This is a good spot. I see the IS-6, and I know I've got a shot on his back, so all I need to do is come out, and I don't notice the T-69. There he is. He's actually coming downhill. So did not notice that, otherwise I'd have killed him first. I get spotted and hit, and then now I'm like, I got to get rid of that guy, and this dude just puts the hurting on me. Fortunately, one of them bounces. That's a good thing. I just catch the very back edge, and there's the artillery. Wham. Which is exactly what I was worried about if I came out too early. The AT's down at the bottom, so I'm not worried about crossing the open area as far as the AT goes. I am trying to avoid another artillery strike if I can. So I'm at 4,145. I've got 3 kills. And we're in here. I think it's all over with the shouting. I'm pretty sure I don't get any more shots. Actually, I may get a shot on the AT. Let's find out. I don't think so, actually. I think he gets away from me. Yep, no shot on it. Oh, wait, there we go. Already, nope, nope. Nothing. I get nothing. All right, and that's the end of that. 4,145, 499. Assist, an example of it playing more like a sniper back row bush camping tank. So you've seen kind of the gamut of it doing a bush sniping, flexing to a mobile, more heavy medium roll. You saw a game with more of a heavy medium roll, and then a pretty pure up until the very end bush camping roll. All right, that is it. Let's get to the conclusion. All right, that is it for the T-103 Tier 8 Russian premium heavy medium thing. Mongoloid tank. It's a very strange tank. So what is it overall? Well, it is balanced, which is going to be in most people's books that it's bad because it's not going to stand up to the multiple overpowered offerings that have been coming out in the past. Every once in a while we get a balanced one, and of course everyone hates it because it's bad, right? It's not overpowered, so that therefore it is bad. It's a TD, but it has a turret. That gives it a lot of flexibility in some cases, but it doesn't have the staying power of a heavy. It doesn't have the mobility and speed of a medium, so it's kind of bad at either one of those, but it can do them. It can do them. So while there's a lot of flexibility with the turret, it's not really great at doing things with turrets, and it's not really great at being a TD. So it's kind of balanced. It really is a jack of all trades tank with a decent DPM and a pretty good alpha for Tier 8, and the pen, enough pen, especially if you dab 2, to handle most things up to Tier 10. I liked it. It's not something I would play every single day, but I thought it was kind of unique, kind of interesting. I do like the unique and interesting tanks, and this one is definitely one of those things. I don't usually tell people whether it's worth it or not money-wise. That's up to you to decide based on your own capabilities and money and whatnot. For me, I thought it was a pretty cool tank. All right, guys, that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support of the channel, and we will see you.